Uh,
Well, welcome back, James Braha. I feel so honored to have you on the
Thank you.
podcast and the show yet again.
Thank you.
And I know that you're on to talk about something very special today. After 45 years of practicing astrology, you've decided to make a 12-step masterclass.
That's right.
How long did it take you to make the class?
Well, it was 12 weeks. I basically stopped doing charts for 12 weeks, and I would spend a week researching the charts that I wanted to do. The reason it's 12 sessions, they're about an hour and 20 minutes each. And the reason they're 12 sessions is because I took 12 classes. Like the first class shows you a great first house, what it means, how that chart's working, a lousy, afflicted first house, and a confusing first house, like a first house where Jupiter's on the ascendant, but the ascendant ruler is 1 degree away from Saturn. What does that mean? Like that. So it's
Amazing.
12, so it's 12 classes. It started out with 3 charts per class, a great third house, a bad third house, a confusing third house. By the time I was done, I was using 5, 6, 7 charts in each session. So it goes for 12 sessions, and the results are phenomenal. Students are actually students that have been studying this for decades, honestly, decades. Suddenly, they're actually able to read charts, the confusing ones. They're able to do it, and they're able to get, 70% accuracy. One guy from Estonia told me, he said, James, you're going to be known more for these classes than you are for your books. That may
Wow.
be the case. That'll be the case if people buy them. Not everybody's buying them, not everybody can afford them, but it's better than going to India, trust me on that, because I went to India twice. And when I put the charts in front of Santanam and in front of Padia in 2 different trips, 1982, 1984, they would look at the charts and read them cold. Whereas I took a week, I had hundreds of horoscopes that I went through to find which charts I wanted to use to make certain points about a house. And I started out not using famous people, and then I found that it was better to use famous people for a lot of them. There's always in every class there's charts that are of people unknown, but there's also always 2 or 3 famous people because you know their lives.
Yes.
Um, so it's a phenomenal it's a phenomenal class. It's an hour and 20 minutes. That may sound like, oh, that's not that long. That's pretty long. And that's, like I say, I spent a week studying the charts, looking at them to make the points that I wanted to. So, like I have this one guy. He's an artist. I did his chart, musician. I did his chart 20 years ago. He was trying to decide, should I stay in music? My family wants me to go in business. I said, you got to stay in music because that's the horoscope. So he told me, he said, James, you did my horoscope. You changed my life. I mean, I'm a musician because of you. He said, and the reading was great. But what you're doing right now is nothing like what you did for me 20 years ago. It's so much more advanced. When I say it's advanced, it's not complicated. It's not complicated. It's just that in my third and fourth decade of practicing, there were quantum leaps that kept going along the way. And I was doing a video the other day, and I was saying that in the first 20 years, there were lots of things that I would recommend for people because I had done so much self-improvement work. So if somebody had trauma, I would send them to rebirthing, a breathing technique, or I would send them to bioenergetic analysis. If somebody had nervousness, nerve problems, I would send them to transcendental meditation. Or if they were too, if their energy was too extreme, if they had Mars, Uranus, or Mercury with Mars and Uranus, they can't sit still. So I would tell them to go to martial arts. I had a whole long list, bioenergetics, neurolinguistic, because I had gone through all these different things and they helped me. What happens by the third or fourth decade, if you are serious about really digging into the horoscopes for accuracy, if you're serious about it, compulsive about finding the truth of the horoscope, and you have a good intention, a really strong intention to help people, what starts to happen by the third or fourth decade is that your accuracy and your ability to read the whole chart, read to see the chart not in pieces. In the first 20 years, people would come and they would get pieces of their life without the context. By the
Mm,
third and fourth decade, suddenly you look at the chart, you see everything. You
yeah.
just see, I don't mean that you see every event, but you see the life, you see the essence of the life, the purpose, who the person is. You just see so much. And then what happens is as you're describing the horoscope and only speaking what you know, which by the third or fourth decade is plenty. Of course, there's going to be things I say, I don't know, it's not clear. But there's so much that is clear that what happens is that as you're reading the horoscope, telling them who they are, what they're here for, all that stuff, the healing starts to take place in your words. The healing starts to take place in the session without them having to go and do this and do that. So when the people are taking the classes, they're emailing me and they're saying, James, I'm getting 70% accuracy. I had one guy, he said, James, I'm 70% accurate, but when I do the charts for Indians, they fall flat. And I
Huh.
explained why. I explained why. They fall flat when you are speaking about their family members. If there's a problem with the mother, they will never admit it. If there's a problem with the son, they will never admit. They're not allowed to admit it. Now, for the first, I got to say, 30 years, I thought maybe they're just very different. Maybe their culture is so different that the horoscopes aren't working. Eventually, I talked to some astrologers and they said, look, they're going to say, no, there's no problem. No, there's no problem. After you do 3 or 4 sessions with them, they will start to admit the problems. And sometimes it's not the relationship with the parent. It could be the parent's life is very difficult. They won't even admit that. If I say, look, it's either there's a problem in your relationship with the father, or the father's life is difficult, or they won't even admit that the father's life is difficult. It's just off limits.
Mhm.
So it's not that astrologer who's taken the classes, he's 90%, 70% accurate, I'm sure. And all you have to do is take the classes twice, watch them, watch all 12, go back, watch them all again. You're going to get 70% accuracy if you're serious, if you have the talent and you're serious. And a lot of people say they're serious, but they're not really. They're not really. So anyway.
Yeah, and so I'm curious. I know that a lot of people who are listening are really interested in exploring the class and hearing more about the logistics of it. And I'm sure that so many people are interested in how involved you are in the class. Are these pre-recorded? Do you have involvement in it? Like, how
Yeah,
does it work?
they're 12. So you pay the money, you get 12 links.
Nice.
You go in and you just watch them.
And
That's
so it can be done on their own time.
oh,
They can
absolutely.
pause it, they can get up, go to
Uh,
work, come back, finish
They're
it.
gonna
So it's very convenient.
they're gonna pause it, they're gonna go back, and occasionally somebody will email me something. There's some interesting things that happen in those classes. Like I was doing the chart of Rajneesh, Osho Rajneesh,
Nice. Hmm.
the great guru. He's got all these planets in the eighth house.
Hmm.
So everybody talks about how metaphysical and psychic and all that was. But the thing is, I put the chart there mainly to see the second house because all of those eighth house planets are aspecting the second house, which is writing and teaching. And Mercury's in the eighth, aspecting its own sign, Gemini, in the second house. And that Mercury is stationary, which is the most powerful feature in my experience of all astrology. So I'm looking at his horoscope for the second house. Now, I'm talking about how he's a teacher, he's a writer. He wrote so many books. I get an email from this lady. She says he never wrote any books. I said, "No." She said, "No. What he did was he would speak them. He
Oh,
would
got
speak
it.
them and
Okay,
turn
okay.
them into books." From the astrologer's point of view, it's the same thing. Whether he wrote them with the pen or spoke them, he was a great, great, great teacher. So you know, there's things like that. Also, I was doing the chart of Al Pacino, and the horoscope is very, very clear in his art, in his artistry. It's a very clear horoscope, but he's got Jupiter, Sun, and Saturn in Aries. So the Sun's in Aries, exalted in the 10th house. Jupiter is there, but Saturn is fallen in Aries, right next to the Sun. And I was doing the chart, and I was really good with explaining everything, the art, the talent. Um, I said, I don't know what that Sun Saturn is doing there. I know that the Sun is really ruined because it's really tightly close to Saturn in Aries. Saturn's the father, which the father was just, he had no, it was a terrible relationship. Father left early. It was terrible. And the Sun rules the second house, which is the food that you eat. So it made him an alcoholic.
Mm.
But I couldn't conceive that he actually was lacking confidence the way Saturn with the Sun would do, especially
Mm.
in Aries. I just read his autobiography and I said, "Oh, I missed it." He didn't go to the Oscars 40 years ago, 50 years ago, whenever it was. And they said, "Oh, he's too conceited or something like that." He was scared. He was scared. Oh, no,
Interesting.
it
Wow.
was that the rumor was that he thought that he should have been nominated as best actor instead of best supporting. It was total nonsense, but that got all into the environment. Everybody thought that he was, oh, I'm so great. I should have been nominated for. No, that wasn't it. It
Oh.
was so he's got a lack of confidence and he stopped acting. He stopped doing movies for about 3 or 4 years because he had 3 or 4 flops in a row. Now, most actors would take it in stride until they get another one, but he was so upset by it, his confidence. So, anyway, that's just
Yes.
an interesting point that I didn't. I said, I don't know what that Sun Saturn is doing because the guy looks as confident as can be, but he's
Hmm.
not.
Interesting. And so I know that you had some charts that you were wanting to discuss. Are those two of them, or are there some other examples that you wanted to share?
Oh, there's a lot of them,
Oh,
but I'm
okay.
going to keep them quick. I want to keep them quick.
Okay.
I want the astrologers to understand it's not about planets and houses. It's about the whole chart, the aspects. And the rulerships are critical. So I'm going to talk about a couple of those. And what do you do when there's 3 or 4 planets in a house that is fantastic, but there's one really nasty aspect? Those are the things that students can't figure out on their own without 20 or 30 years. The class makes it clear,
Wow.
you do the classes and now you know. Like you take the chart of Charlie Chaplin. The guy's got Sun exalted in the seventh house, Mars, the ruler of the seventh house, in the seventh, right next to Venus, and aspected by a full moon, not a moon, a full moon in the first. So you got Mars in Aries, Sun in Aries, Venus in Aries, aspected by a full moon. It's all fantastic for marriage. However, Mars, the seventh house ruler, is in 21 degrees Aries. Saturn's over here in Cancer at 21 degrees Cancer, throwing an aspect onto that seventh ruler at 21 and 21, an exact aspect. So the house is phenomenally strong for beautiful partners, successful partners, artistic partners. It's all Venusian because the seventh ruler is right next to Venus. But Saturn is devastating that seventh house ruler as well. So what does he have? He's got 4 marriages and 3 or 4 scandals. Sleeping with someone who's underage, has to go to Mexico to get a abortion. I mean,
Oh,
it's just
geez.
the scandals with relationships are just off the charts. This is the kind of thing that I'm trying to teach in the classes. What happens when there's a bunch of good but one really nasty? Okay, another one, another issue. I'm doing horoscopes so many times, and I say, look, your second house is the strongest house in your chart, but there's no planets in the second house. Your ninth house is the strongest house in the chart, but there's no planets in the ninth house. Doesn't matter. It's the rulerships and the aspects. So here's 3 of them. You take Elon Musk, phenomenally wealthy. No planets in the 11th house, which is large sums of money. The ruler of the 11th house is Mars, exalted in Capricorn in the highest degree of exaltation, the 28th degree of Capricorn is Mars, okay? And Mars is with Rahu, which is making Mars incredibly strong. And Mars aspects the 11th house, its own sign, Aries. Now, so the 11th house is large sums of money. The ruler's exalted in the highest degree in the eighth, which is money from unearned means. So he gets into PayPal. He doesn't do a damn thing. And the money just keeps coming in. It keeps pouring in because it's money from unearned means.
Mm.
That's the 11th house. There's no planets there, but it's phenomenal. Jay Leno. Jay Leno has the exalted sun in the fourth house. Big deal. It's not, the sun is not in the 10th degree of Aries. Uh, it's in 14 degrees. It's past the highest degree of exaltation, but there's an exalted, relatively exalted sun in the fourth house, which is cars and boats and planes.
Nice.
So Jay Leno has 150 cars, 150 motorcycles. Repeat, he owns 150 vintage cars, 150 vintage motorcycles, and he works on them all the time. And if he hadn't been in show business, he would have been a mechanic. He loved doing that. So his chart, the fourth house ruler Mars, it's in the eighth, not a good house, but Mars is 29 degrees of Leo, aspected by Venus at 28 degrees Aquarius. So Mars is aspected by Venus within minutes. Mars is also with the moon. Mars is also aspected by Jupiter. So the fourth ruler is aspected by three giant benefics.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you have the sun in the fourth house. Now, on top of that, I use the chart to also show that there are not just four great aspects on this fourth house, but Mercury, which is in the fifth house, is actually in the fourth and the fifth because of the Bava chart.
Mm-hmm.
So Mercury's in like 3 degrees of Taurus, but the ascendant's 29 degrees. So that Mercury is actually falling in the fifth, but also in the fourth. So that's where his cars come from. Okay. Another one would be Amitabh, who was in the movie Slumdog Millionaire.
I love that movie.
Yeah. Well,
I've seen it
okay.
like 8 times.
Uh,
Go ahead.
I'm glad we're using this one then. So
Yeah.
Amitabh is this great, famous, brilliant actor. There's no planets in the third house, which is the arts. There's no planet in the fifth house, which is the arts, but the third is really more. The third is specifically the arts. The fifth is artistic because it's very creative.
Mm-hmm.
Al Pacino's chart's more about, Al Pacino's is great with the third and the fifth, but the fifth is just brilliant mental creativity. The third is specifically the arts. No planets in the third. The third house is aspected by the moon. That's really good. Then you look at the third house ruler, Mars. Aries is the third house. Mars, it's in the eighth house. It's right next to Mercury, exalted Mercury. So Mars is 22 Virgo. Mercury is exalted at 23 Virgo, right next to that Mars. And Mars is also on the other side is Venus. And then on top of that, Mars is aspecting its own sign, Aries. So the moon and Mars aspecting the third, and Mars aspecting its own sign. The ruler of the third is right next to exalted Mercury and right next to Venus. It's the third house is the dominant. So when the students take these classes, they start looking at charts like this and they go, oh my God, this woman's great seventh house because of the aspect. They see it. That's the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that took me decades to get. I might have, I want to talk about Byron Katie. Byron Katie, this phenomenal spiritual healer. You look at the horoscope and you see the sixth house is phenomenal. Mars is in its own sign in the sixth. The moon is in the sixth. The sun is in the sixth. Mercury's in the sixth. Venus is in the sixth. And they're all aspected by Jupiter. The sixth house is phenomenal. But the 12th house is getting all of those aspects as well.
Mm-hmm.
So people would think she's a nurse or a doctor. No, she's going to be spiritual because this 12th house is phenomenal. Now there's another chart I love to use, which is David Stockman, who was the Treasury Secretary for Ronald Reagan. He was going to come in and solve all the spending. He was going to do it. He was 35. He said, we're going to cut everywhere and cut this. If we don't do it, you're going to see deficits as far as the eye can see if we don't cut these debts. He gets in there and nobody lets him cut anything. However, you look at his chart and you think, oh, this is a spiritual chart. 12th house, Venus, Mars in its own sign, Venus, Mars in its own sign, Mercury in the 12th. These are all in the 12th, Venus in the 12th, Mars in its own sign, Scorpio in the 12th, Mercury in the 12th, stationary, Mercury in the 12th, stationary, Ketu in the 12th house. So now you got 4 planets in the 12th house, Venus, Mars, Mercury, and you're thinking, whoa, this is one spiritual horoscope, but it's not. It's all about debts and expenses.
Hmm.
Debts and expenses. And a lot of times, if I see a chart, I'll say to the person, look, you can either, like Mercury rules his 10th house, career, it's in the 12th. So I said, so I would say to somebody like this, you can either do spiritual career or you can handle debts and expenses. You can go to a company and you can say, let me do the buying for you. I can cut your expenses beyond what you know. I've had this happen with clients over and over. Well, not over and over. Most 12th house planets that I see, the people are spiritual, they're coming to an astrologer. Most of the time it's that, but sometimes it's not. And I say you can either do a spiritual career or you can go to a company and handle their spending. But this particular chart, one of the reasons you would know it's not necessarily spiritual, but more debts and expenses, is that Rahu is dominating this chart. Rahu's in Taurus, which is a great placement, and it's with the full moon. The moon is like a day or two after the full moon. So Rahu's in Taurus, great, great, strong Rahu, with this very bright moon aspected by Venus, Mars, and Mercury. So now you got this tremendous, and it's in the 6th house. So he's trying to fix things, solve things, and fix things. So
Nice.
those are the kind of things in the classes that you get. Another great one, which makes a huge point. People look at Albert Einstein's chart. I've never heard anybody talk about Einstein's chart having Mars exalted in the 8th house with Rahu. Mars Rahu, when you put them together, is already phenomenal energy and intensity, and Mars is exalted. This is in the 8th, so it's either sexy appearance. Well, he didn't have a sexy appearance,
Maybe not to
but
you, James. There may be
but
somebody out there who thinks that. Go
well,
ahead.
you know what? Well, you know what? I have something to say about that. First, let me say the Mars exalted in the 8th with Rahu means that guy is going to be going toward research,
Yes.
research. What's under the surface? Now, this guy had a lot of affairs
Yes.
and marriages for the time that he lived in. He had several affairs and a few marriages. So I have a feel. So what makes the person sexy from the 8th house is there's so much energy coming out of them. The 8th house is life energy. People see it as the house of death. It's the house of life energy. So there's all this energy coming out of the person. So he could have been quite sexy in person. It's quite possible. Anyway, I use that 8th house for the research, and then Taylor Swift, and this is the last one, and then you can ask your questions.
Okay.
Taylor, Taylor Swift has a magnificent 1st house because she's got Mars right on the ascendant in its own sign, Scorpio. And then she's got Rahu and Venus in the 3rd house, which Elvis Presley also had, which gives a tremendous amount. Where's the chart? Rahu and Venus is the same as Elvis Presley, and all this energy coming out of him from the 3rd house, and it's music. But this is not so much a music chart; it's a writing musical chart. It's writing because she's got Mercury and Saturn in the 2nd house, which isn't that great, but Mercury's in its own. Mercury is a planet of writing in the house of writing, 2nd house. But she's got Saturn and Mercury in the 2nd, and she's got the full moon about 2 days after the full moon, and Jupiter aspecting that 2nd house, and Jupiter's aspecting its own sign, Sagittarius, and Jupiter's 13 Gemini, and Mercury is 14 Sag. So Jupiter's aspecting Mercury within a degree. Mercury's writing and teaching in the house of writing and teaching, and the full moon aspects, and Saturn is there. And even in that chart, even the sun is in the 2nd house because the sun, it's in Scorpio, but the ascendant's one Scorpio and the sun is 27 or something, very late Scorpio. So it's 4 or 5 planets aspect, you know, going toward that second house. That's the kind of stuff that takes decades to learn, but if you do the classes, you get them pretty quickly.
Incredible. And so for people who are listening, I mean, I think it goes without saying this is a Vedic astrology course. All everything that you're saying is Vedic. Um, but also, who is the class for? Because I know that some people may be thinking, oh man, I don't even know if I'm advanced enough because I don't even know what Mercury means. So is this intended for people who have already studied a little bit of astrology, or is it for beginners? Like who should take it?
You have to know, you have to know the meanings of the planets.
Okay.
You have to know the general meanings of the houses. You don't have to have them all memorized because I spent an hour and a half on the first house, an hour and a half on the second house. So you're going to learn the meanings of the houses. But you need to know what the planets mean. You need to know the aspects. You need to know that all planets aspect their opposite house. You need to have read uh, this basic book, the Ancient Hindu
I was
Astrology.
going to ask
You
about
need you you
yeah,
need
go
that
ahead.
book.
Okay.
You need that book just to get you started. And now after that, people, if they're serious, they ought to get the Braha Sutras because that's a book that will save you 5, 10, 15 years of stuff that you would normally not know. Well, is this more important? Is that more important? The Braha Sutras is that kind of book. When an astrologer writes a book at the age of 70, and they've been in the field for 40 years, you're going to get the true stuff. That's why Isabel Hickey's book is my favorite book on Western astrology, because she was 70 when she wrote it. And so it's packed with information. The same with the Braha Sutras, but the Braha Sutras is more about things that are complicated that would take you years to figure out. It just puts it out there very simply.
Okay. Awesome. And so I know, like, you keep on talking about how experience has really changed how you do readings and also how you teach. How do you think that this course looks different than if you would have made it 20 years ago or even 10 years ago?
10 years ago, it would have been close.
Okay.
Um, but I have to say that aside from my work, aside from my work, I can tell by the responses of the people that take the course that a quantum leap has occurred with Vedic astrology in the Western world. Let me explain. When I came back from India, I found Hindu astrology to be pretty easy to do, but I wasn't anything near like what I am now. But I could get the basics easily. When I tried to teach it, it was like pulling teeth. Even for people that knew Western, it was like pulling teeth because there was nothing in the environment. It was brand new in the
Mm,
environment. It's like, you know, I thought when we raised our kid, I thought, well, he's not going to be that materialistic. We'll keep him away from the television and from all the crap that's in the environment. It doesn't matter. It's in the environment, all the materialism,
yes.
all the money is the most important thing now. It used to be the character was important. Now money is the most important. It's just in the atmosphere. I can tell
Wow.
by the fact that the students are actually learning how to read a chart. I said, this is not just me. I mean, yeah, the classes are brilliant, but this is not just me. This is that the people are finally, I mean, one guy said, I've been sending him books for 20 years, my books, and he's been studying and asking questions. He could never get it. He took the classes. By class 4, he said, the reason I could never get it was because I thought either the house of marriage was good or bad, either the house of money was good or bad, either the house, it's not like that,
Mhm.
like the chart that I was telling you of Charlie Chaplin. It's phenomenal for marriage, but it's also terrible. Those are the things. Now it's in the environment. People are getting it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and you had mentioned this to me before as well. You had said something like life is complicated and so astrology is complicated. And when you think about it, it's
Absolutely.
like as we move through life, so many things happen in relationships. There can be so many different complicated experiences. We may have one terrible marriage and then we get married to our soulmate, and it's like that
Right.
has to be reflected somehow, you know?
That is absolutely reflected. And something that is very important to tell people, when you see a bad marriage, as well as some good aspects for marriage, maybe the Navamsha is good, but the natal seventh isn't. Maybe the marriage chart, maybe the marriage house is bad, but Jupiter or Venus is right opposite the moon. In other words, when you see bad and good for marriage, the bad one happens first and then the good one. It cannot happen the other way. And here's why. The first marriage cannot be good and then the second marriage bad. It can't work that way because if the first marriage was good, why did it end? Why did it end? Why did the partner die? Why did it end? So it doesn't work that way. Once in a blue moon, the person has a great marriage and then something happens. But I'm talking one out of 250. If it's
Right.
good and bad, if it's good and bad, the bad one's first, the second one's good. This is important because somebody's gone through some terrible, trauma with relationship, and they're afraid. And you say, look, there's a good marriage coming, no doubt, if it's there.
Totally. Yeah. And so, what inspired you to make this class? I remember one time you were doing an interview with me and you had mentioned that one of the reasons why you wanted to write books was so that in your next incarnation you could find good astrology books.
That's a joke. I
So,
mean,
did you
it's
create this class for yourself in your next lifetime? Is
no,
that
no, no,
actually
no,
what you
no,
did?
no, no. Listen, listen, listen. What brings you back into the next incarnation is an attachment.
Okay, so
So
you're
if you,
not coming back.
I don't, I could come back to be an artist. I could see having an attachment to I can't see being attached to more astrology. I can't see it. So no, it's not that.
Okay, okay.
Um, so, so I didn't choose to do the classes. People had asked me for 30 years to teach, and I said, I teach through my books. I teach through my books. Saturn got into my 10th house in 2023. Saturn through the 10th house transit it's about the only transit that I like of Saturn for myself. I've seen it
Got it.
twice now, and it's the only transit that I like. When Saturn goes through the 10th, you get the results of your efforts over the last 20 or 30 years. If you've been working hard, you get the results. Not luck. It's not luck. It's a slow, steady process. And the career gets bigger and better for those 2.5 years because Saturn brings organization and administration. Organization and administration comes into the career, and then the career gets better. So, how did it come in? I work with Andrew Mason, who is an astrologer, but he makes my books. When you see my books and you see the layout and the large print, Andrew's the one that helps me with that. He's been telling me for 4 or 5 years, you should do a class. It's very easy. You should do a class. It's very easy. I say, how is it easy? I don't know what I'm doing with computers. I can write books on computers. I can send emails. That's it. I don't know how to make a video. He says, I'll help you. I'll help you. I'll help you. And
Aw,
finally, Saturn through the 10th house said, hey, this guy's going to help me. Okay, let's do it. So,
nice. Amazing.
and I have to tell you, in the very first session of the very first class, you'll actually hear me say, I'm really regretful that I didn't do this sooner. I feel like my whole life has built up to these classes.
Hmm.
That's just the way it happened. But I'm actually really glad that I waited until I knew what I know. The last 5 years, which would be probably from, between 40 years of doing astrology and 45 years, things have come together more and more and more. I'm telling you, the greatest thing that I find is the ability to do horoscopes and actually heal people without having to send them to different things because there's something that occurs when the accuracy is that great that happens to their psychology is just something that happens and it's stunning. And Isabel Hickey used to do it, and just by talking, she would do it. And And I'm betting my life that that didn't happen to her in her first 20 years. I'm
Right.
betting my life that that happened after 30, 40 years of practice. That's when that started
Mhm.
to occur.
Mhm. Yeah. And so I'm interested, in the counseling portion of things. Well, first and foremost, I think that people are drawn to astrology because they can feel the sense of being seen. And the astrology will start revealing aspects of themselves that they know to be true, but maybe they didn't have the language for. And I think there can be something so therapeutic in having someone read our chart and see these elements of ourselves and then give language to things that maybe we had known, but again, we didn't know how to verbalize it or we didn't know how to say it. But it sounds like what you're talking about is much more energetic and much more almost like psychic. Is that true?
What happens, what happens is that this is complicated. So,
I'm so interested.
no, you brought out a great point. The There's a movie called Glengarry Glen Ross, and it's about salespeople. And Alec Baldwin plays this hardcore salesperson, training the other salespeople that are doing poorly. And he's yelling at them. He's saying, "You've got to close the deal. You've got to make the sale. You got to close the deal. A, B, C, always be closing, always be closing, always be closing, A, B, C."
Hmm.
For astrologers, it's A, B, Q, always be questioning, always be
Hmm.
questioning,
Wow.
always be in the question. Now, I'm talking about if you want to be a great astrologer, you have to from day one, you have to be questioning, is Mars this or is it that? Am I really correct with this? Am I really correct with that? You've got to be in the question all the time. Now, after you're in the question on your own time all the time, you're in the question when you're analyzing the chart. Then when you're with the client, you're the knower. You tell them what you know. Then you go back to, wait, what do I really know? And you have to be skeptical and questioning all the time.
Hmm.
If you do that for decades, you will weed out the garbage. You'll weed out the crap that doesn't work, even though people say it works.
Hmm.
You'll weed that stuff out because you're constantly questioning, does that really work?
Yeah.
I asked my first teacher, do solar returns work? My first Indian teacher, he said they're useless and baseless. I said to Robert Hand, do the solar returns work? He said, try it this way, try it that way, try it this way, try it that way. You know what that means? Try it 6 different ways, it means it doesn't work.
Hmm.
So you got to be in the question all the time. Now,
Yes.
if you're in the question all the time, there comes a point after 3 or 4 decades where you start to know on a level that is hard to describe. You start to know in such an authoritative way that when you're talking to the client and you're telling them, look, this is your greatest talent. I don't care that you have no confidence. I don't care this or that. This is it. It's like it sounds like I'm bragging, but I don't mean it that way. It's like if you could go to God and God would say, "This is it," you would do it.
Hmm.
People want to know the truth. So there comes a point if you're constantly in the question of astrology all the time and the aspects and the houses, eventually there's an evolutionary process. I see it with Isabel Hickey. Not enough astrologers make it to the age of 70 because they can't make a living. But there comes a point, if you're that serious, where the knowledge, you see the horoscope so crystal clear that when the person hears certain information, they get it.
Hmm.
Look, yes, your relationships are really difficult. They're really bad. This chart is saying the spouse must absolutely be spiritual and metaphysical. They must absolutely be. When they hear that, and they've never had a metaphysical spiritual spouse, now they hear it, it rings true. It's a healing. Now they can have a relationship they couldn't before,
Hmm.
like that. It's
Yeah.
it's
So
it
cool.
happens in lots of different ways.
Yeah.
It's the career, it's your children, it's your marriage, it's your money. You can't make money in this chart. You can't make money from a salary. The second house is no good. You've got to do it from side ventures.
Hmm.
And
Totally.
if you know that, if it's crystal clear and your accuracy is that good, it's like an authority figure is giving them the truth. And I'm telling you, it
Mhm.
heals them. It
Yes.
sends them in the right direction.
And so for people who are going to take your class, I know they're really excited. And I think that the classes, you've managed to distill this wisdom and understanding and experience that you've cultivated throughout 45 years, which is longer than, I've been alive than a lot of us have been alive. I'm just being honest. But it's like, you've taken this wisdom and instilled it into a class, and where if they take that information and, as you said, they're serious about it and they practice and they look at charts and they give readings, it will help expedite the process of getting to that space you're talking about. I just kind of want to say, it's like, I don't think everyone can just kind of download that gift. It's something that's certainly cultivated through practice, but you've created a platform where people can like derive the seeds to start cultivating that ability.
That is 100%. I'm getting emails from students and they're saying, James, look at this chart. 5 planets aspecting this house. Now
Aw.
listen, now listen carefully. In the first 10 or 20 years, I would see, oh, there's a bad aspect. Oh, there's a good aspect. But it didn't gel like that. It didn't, oh, there's 3 good aspects and 2 bad ones. Oh, there's 4 good ones. I mean, it takes a long period of time, but I'm telling you that some sort of quantum leap has occurred because my students are emailing me and they're asking me, and I'm going, yep, you got it. Yes, that's exactly what's, and you can tell that person. I mean, I can't tell you, to have students email me and say, James, I'm like getting 90%, I'm getting 70% accuracy. They're telling me, James, I'm doing horoscopes and the people's jaws are dropping. James, I'm doing a horoscope for a guy's wife who doesn't believe in astrology, and suddenly she's going, oh my God.
She's scared. Yeah. But so how can people register for this class? Where do
Oh,
they go?
you just go to my website, jamesbraha.com, and you'll see there's 12 little 2-minute clips. So you see what classes look like. There's a clip for the first house, the second house, the third. You go to jamesbraha.com, it's right on the home page, and you'll see it.
And they have access to the classes forever.
Yep.
Yep.
What you do is, we're not doing passwords and stuff like that. What we're doing is, um, I send them all 12 links together. And by the way, if they can't afford all 12 classes, they can buy half of them. They can even buy 3 of them. I've done it so that anybody can do this if they want to, if they're really serious, anybody can. When you get the classes, what you do, I email it to you, and you go up to the top of the page and it has flat, there's a little thing with a flag, a green flag, a blue flag. You flag that email and it'll never be erased. You can't erase it until you unflag it.
Okay. Got it. And so I know that we had spoken earlier also about like working with people who have different personality types. And so it sounds like your classes are very much based on the 12 houses, right?
No, they're based on the horoscopes. They're based on
Okay.
how to read chart. So
Okay.
people think that they can read charts because they know the planets and the houses and the aspects. That's like knowing the words of a language. You learn a language, you're learning words, words, words. There's a point where it comes together as a language and you can speak paragraphs. Okay. So the classes, yes, the way it's organized is class
Right.
number 1 with 3 charts, class number 2, class number 5 with 6 charts, class number 7 with 5 charts. And it's not just the houses, it's also, as you're reading the chart, all sorts of stuff comes up. Kalasarpa yoga comes up,
Of
and
course.
this planet's afflicted. This is the yagas they should do. I mean,
Nice.
look, you're talking about 12 times an hour and 20 minutes. It's a lot of time. And you can see the way I teach. I don't talk about stories. I get right in there.
Yes, you
I
are
get,
very direct.
I am very direct.
So, so in your classes
I have
in the
no filter.
12,
I got an email from someone who said, you have no filter. Because I told her she thought that Mercury was great because it was her ascendant ruler. I said, Mercury's in the 12th, no good. Mercury's next to Mars, no good. Mercury's next to the sun, no good. Mercury's aspect of Rahu, no good. Somebody told her, oh, it's the ascendant ruler, so it's good. So I told her that, and she says, wow, you have no filter. Because I was telling her that planet's no good.
well, I mean, it's better than being lied to.
Well, I tell her
So,
what to do. I
yeah.
said, you get pictures of Lord Vishnu, keep them around the house. Here's the Mercury mantra. You chant that. If you have the money, you get Mercury yagyas. You keep Wednesdays, the day of Mercury, sacred. But I'm not going to lie and say, oh, your Mercury's great because it rules the ascendant. It's the most afflicted planet in the chart.
So in the 12 classes, though, I was trying to ask this earlier and I kind of asked it in a weird way, but do you talk about how to give a reading? Because I feel like sometimes people can have all the information, and astrology, in my opinion, it's very much a science. And so you can be really great at science, but you might not be that great with like talking to people and interacting with them. And so do you allude to any of that in the
A little bit.
classes? Okay.
Yeah, I'll say this is terrible, but you don't say that to the person. You know,
Yeah.
you, yeah, there's a certain amount of that, of course. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And another topic that I know you wanted to discuss, and I had it here on my notes to make sure that we got to it before our time was up together, but I know you wanted to talk about nakshatras.
Yeah,
So
the
I'm
thing
ready.
is that the thing is that there's a lot of astrologers who, like me, they read the nakshatras and they say this is just so generic, it's so basic. So all I want to do is to tell the facts. The thing is, the facts don't matter much anymore with politics. And in astrology, with the nakshatras, the facts don't matter either. People love them. They're not about people's lives. The nakshatras are not about people's lives. They do not tell you what your spouse is going to be like. They do not tell you your career. They do not tell you your children. They don't tell you your money. My life, if you look at my life can be encapsulated in very simple terms. A dysfunctional childhood, a schizophrenic mother, 10 years in the arts, and then the rest of my life was astrology and enlightenment. That's it. Spiritual, astrology, a dysfunctional childhood, crazy mother, and the arts. That's it. There's not anywhere in those nakshatras that you would find anything like that. It doesn't give that information. Okay, that may sound like opinion. Let me give you the facts. Parashara Parasara is the Bible of Hindu astrology. Oh, let me say this first. Nakshatras do have a place. They're good for when you muhurtas, when you're going to start something, the
Um,
nakshatras. And if you're going to do a marriage compatibility from the Hindu side, nakshatras are good. You want to put the devas with the other devas and not the rakshasa nakshatras. So the nakshatras are good for marriage compatibility. They're good for when to start some endeavor. There's nothing in Parashara Horasara, the Bible, about nakshatras and people's lives. This is a fact. You may argue it. I have people argue it. And I say to them, tell me what page it's on, because it's not there. So, was Parashara, he wrote everything. Was Parashara homesick on the day he was supposed to write nakshatras? No, it wasn't there. The nakshatras are from the Puranas, which is way back before the astrological scriptures, and it's religious. It's religious. The Puranas are religion, and they write a lot about the nakshatras in the religion. When I went to India, both of my teachers, 2 years apart, they said, no, the nakshatras are not for people's lives. That stuff is gone. All we use it for is those two things. I was very disappointed. 10, 20 years ago, Westerners started writing about the nakshatras. They went to the Puranas and they said, oh, let's move this into astrology. Now, there is one text, one astrological text. It's called Brihat Jataka, that talks about nakshatras. Listen carefully. I'm giving you facts. I know they don't care. I love the nakshatras. I don't care about the facts, but these are the facts. Nothing in Parashara. Nothing in Parashara. And by the way, this is the reason I came to this, investigated it, was because when I read the nakshatras, you could read any one of those to 10 people, any one of them, and 7 people are going to say, oh, yes, that's me, because it's very generic. They are archetypes. The nakshatras are archetypes in the same way that I don't have any planets in Scorpio or in Aries. No, I do have Aries. I don't have anything in Sagittarius. I don't have anything in Scorpio. Does that mean that Scorpio and Sagittarius don't exist in my chart? No. Sagittarius is my 8th house. It'll tell you about my 8th house. Scorpio is my 7th house. It'll tell you. So the nakshatras are like that. We all have the 27 nakshatras in our lives because they are archetypes, but they are not about the specifics. So here's the point. The one book that has the nakshatras, first of all, they only say if the moon is in this nakshatra, They don't say if the sun, they don't say if the ascendant, they don't say Venus, they don't say Mars. They say if the moon is in this nakshatra. That's it. Next, next. In that book, Brihat Jataka, which is what everybody uses because that's the only text that it shows, they go to the Puranas, which is religious. No, in the astrological scriptures, you go to Brihat Jataka. It's 3 pages, not big pages, 3 pages for 27 nakshatras. What you get is between 10 and 14 words per nakshatra. Let me repeat. For each nakshatra, you get between 10 and 14 words. So it'll say if your moon nakshatra is in Ashwini, the person will be. And then you get 10 or 12 words. You get good looking, a healer. No, they won't say a healer. They'll say generous, doesn't like this, loves other people's wives. You will get 10 words, 10 to 14 words, 10 to 14 words. And the 10 to 14 words, they're mostly nonsense. They are you read it. Go to Brihat Jataka, read the 10 or 12 words. Remember, don't read it for the sun, don't read it for the ascendant. These are the facts. Now, people today love the nakshatras. They're very exciting. But I'm telling you, do the test. Take a nakshatra and read it to 10 people. 7 of them are going to say, yeah, that's me.
So it goes without saying that the nakshatras are not covered in your class.
Yeah, I just covered it.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So you talk
I
about
just
that in your
covered,
12
I just
step
told you,
programs.
I just told you what the nakshatras are. The
Okay.
nakshatras are archetypes that are in everybody's life, and they are not specific. They are not about your career. They are not about it's not what they are.
Okay. So I have a few more questions for you. We have a few more minutes left.
Please, please.
When you created the class, did you have fun?
Oh my God. The thing is, when I started to do the classes, I look at it now and it's kind of embarrassing because I get to class one and I go, welcome to class one, like I'm doing a video with you. So if you think that my videos are fun, this is the same as the
Oh,
classes.
that's
And
so great.
Andrew, so I have Andrew on the other side for about 5 minutes, and then he leaves, and then it's just me, then he comes back. But
Nice.
it's me, it's like I'm doing a video.
Awesome. So
That's what's fun.
cool. Amazing.
You
And
could see
so,
it when you go on jamesbraha.com and you click on those links, there's 12 2-minute segments. You'll see exactly what it looks
okay,
like.
great. And so if people are vacillating between your class and maybe taking some other class that they're interested in or another astrology course, what do you think makes your course stand out?
Well, everything I've just said, it's a
Yeah, it's really
it's
different.
it's I mean, I'll tell you what one person said. I sent it to one guy and he said, "You're going to sell so many of these because all the other astrologers are so boring." I was an actor, so when I'm doing these videos, I'm performing a little bit. I'm
Totally.
it's like a performance. I mean, sometimes I get upset. I say, "Why don't you slow down and look at the chart?" But like I don't do that because I feel like I'm on stage. It's
Yeah.
Al Pacino said, when you're on stage, you're on the high wire. So that's how I am. So
So fun. And I think it's
yeah,
like a personality thing too. So if anyone is listening to this and they enjoy listening to you and like being with you in essence through the airwaves, it's like they get to hang out with you for 12
yeah,
entire classes. So,
that's true. But they're going to hear that unfiltered view
yes,
of good and bad and all that stuff. But it's just like the stuff that I was telling you about those charts. So there's 50 horoscopes that are done. 25 are famous and 25 are not famous. And my chart comes in, at least in 6 classes because
fun.
yeah, yeah.
So fun. Well, I'm really excited. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited to go. I mean, you've already sent the previews to me, but I'm really looking forward to this next chapter of your life and expanding to the online world with the support of your friend and student. And yeah, I'm so excited for you. And so just again, people can find your program at jamesbraha.com. It's very easy. Is there anything else you want to add in terms of like support? If there's like an email or any type of social media or anything else that you want to link for people?
I mean, I have 80 videos. It's not really 80 videos. It's probably about 50 videos, and they make them into part one and part two. But if you go to my website, you'll see you click on videos, and there's like 80 different videos there. Videos on the planets and the And that's another thing. If you don't know what the meanings of the planets are, you can go, or the meanings of the aspects and transits and dashas and bhuktis and all of that stuff.
Amazing. And I can't recommend it enough. Like, I've been studying astrology, I've taken astrology courses. I'm going to take your class. So I definitely recommend everybody take it and hang out with you and hear your perspective. And yeah, I'm just really excited. And
I
thank you so
want
much.
people, I want people to be able to do it accurately. When I went to India the first time, uh, Santanam, who was a scholar and a translator of the astrological scriptures, he taught me all the basics, and I used it for about a year and a half. And then I found that it was not accurate enough, so I went back to India. When I went back to India the second time with Padya, and Padya was Santanam was a scholar. Padya was a practicing astrologer. And that's when I learned the meanings of the Raja Yoga Karakas and the functional benefics and functional malefics. That's when I learned the rulerships a little bit more. I mean, it took a while. First, I was getting the planets and the houses and the aspects, but so that's what this is like. You may know a lot of words, you may know a lot of pieces. It's a matter of getting not just giving people pieces, but giving them the essence of the chart, and that will happen if you become accurate enough.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, James. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on. It's always such a pleasure to speak with you.
It's been a long time. Yeah.
It has been a long time. So, but all right. Well, thank you so much. And hopefully, we'll be having you on soon. And I'm sure that I'll be talking to you soon.
Okay.
All right. Bye. Let me